On July 16th, The Hawk lands on Netflix. From the mind of Will Ferrell.
Oh, mama, I'm back!
Comes a new original series.
Get ready. That's it. Did I stutter?
When an iconic pro golfer
Lonnie,
Hawkeye!
takes one last swing at greatness,
you were a big shot golfer.
I still am a big shot golfer.
no one
Dad, I'm the Hawk now.
will stand in his way.
That's how it's done.
The Hawk, only on Netflix, July 16th.
This is going to be an extremely busy month. I have to watch 104 soccer games, follow the pregame, the postgame, yell useless opinions at the TV. It's a lot. So I knew that when it comes to screening for colon cancer, the choice was clear. The Cologuard Plus test. It can be used at home and can only take 15 minutes, so I can do it during halftime and not miss any action. If you are 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a prescription at Cologuard.com.
If I took two equally qualified people and changed nothing except about how they showed up visually, how different would their outcomes be? Welcome back to Speaking with Confidence, the podcast that helps you build the soft skills that lead to real results. Communication, storytelling, public speaking, and showing up with confidence in every conversation that counts. I'm Tim Newman, a recovering college professor turned communication coach, and I'm thrilled to guide you on your journey to becoming a powerful communicator. Today's guests are Caden Broussard and Jinny Chen. Jinny and Caden are the co-founders of Cello, one of the largest styling companies with a focus on professionals in life transition, especially men. Cello stylists work with professionals to dress with confidence and executive presence. Jinny and Caden are on to discuss the importance of dressing when it comes to feeling confident and share some tactical tips around dressing to improve your leadership perception. Caden and Jinny, welcome to Speaking with Confidence.
Oh, nice to talk to you, Tim.
So, as you all started Cello, because I think this is it's a phenomenal idea, especially for guys, especially like me, who have number one who have no fashion sense, two who when I go to the store, I'm not allowed to go buy clothes anymore. But when I go, I'm buying the same things, the same colors, the same styles over and over again because it's comfortable for me because I know that this will match with that. So what was the moment you realized this wasn't a fashion problem for you all, but it was more of a confidence problem?
Yeah, I can start. And it's like great talking with you, Tim. This was actually one of the first things that Jinny and I bonded over when we met. So we met as roommates in grad school. Mm-hmm. And I think like simultaneously, we had felt like we worked really hard. We both had been working corporate jobs that we were really proud of. But we had both kind of noticed that like, even when you like work hard and end up in these like, rooms where you're, finding career success, one thing that really can make you feel out of place or less confident is if you show up and you feel like you're really not dressed for the part. Like it could be dressing too junior. It could be like dressing in a way that actually isn't appropriate to like the setting that you're in. So it was something that we had realized in our own personal lives and had felt like, it's not something that anybody really teaches you, especially if you're a man. Like it's something that you actually have to figure out on your own, but does like really impact how you feel and how you're able to show up in a room. So it was something that we had noticed in our personal lives. And then when we started Cello, as I was talking to our customers, again, especially men, that was actually a theme that came up again and again of a lot of the reasons people came to us were actually not just that they wanted to look better, but it was like, I just got a new job that I'm really excited about. I just got promoted. I just, moved to a new city. And actually, when you make a big transition, one of the first things you're thinking about is, okay, am I actually showing up in the way I want to and dressing the right way for that transition? So it was a theme that had come up with our customers. And then also just in our personal lives that made us feel like, dressing well is more than just about fashion. It's actually about, how you feel about yourself and how you're able to show up professionally and personally.
Yeah. And Tim, you give yourself, or I don't think you give yourself enough credit. Like generally people kind of know, like, I'm comfortable with this. I feel good in this. So they reach for the same thing over and over again. Like a lot of psychology around, if you feel comfortable, if you feel great, like it impacts on how you actually show up. and there's been like studies on this too. And it's like there's like the doctor lab coat one where it impacts like people's actual performance. And so like, I think generally people have good instincts of like, hey, like I felt great in this, so I'm going to keep reach for this again and again. And to Caden's point, it's like sometimes it's like, it's that moment of transition. It's like, okay, like I've reached for this before. I'm now in a new life phase where perhaps when I'm reaching for this, like I haven't found what makes me feel good and confident in this like new state that I'm in.
Yeah, and that's really a good point. And as I think about what you all are saying here, I go back to when I was a kid, and playing sports. My dad would always say, if you look good, you're going to play good. If you're in the right equipment, if your uniform is clean, if your shirt's tucked in, if you've got the, your socks match, if all these things, if you look like you belong, then you're going to perform better. And that's kind of something that really, really gets lost as we get older, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that, to Jinny's point, I think in particular, like, the people we work with, totally range in age from 20s all the way to, 60s and 70s. But I think that, as we get older, it becomes harder to like make the change when it's like, you're comfortable with what you're comfortable with, which totally makes sense. And I think that actually is the juncture where it can be helpful to have like another opinion on like, well, we could try these things, because it's hard to make that change just yourself.
Yeah, when you look at advertisement, fashion advertisement, it doesn't. I mean, not that I'm, I'm not going to fashion shows or things like that. But when you look at commercials and stuff, you very rarely see commercials for men's clothes, and a lot of the times these things are really targeted at the younger generations, the younger people for these styles. And what I found when I was teaching was trying to get students to understand that you do have to make a pretty big transition from being a 18 or 19-year-old student into being a 23 to 24-year-old professional.
Yeah. Kate and I both have that same experience of like in that transition, like suddenly, like I remember my first job, I moved to New York, and I'm like, I have none of my clothes fit to what I needed like for my new job or anything. And so I remember panicking a bunch in the new job of like, okay, like what do I wear beyond just like a blazer and a shirt, and like slowly trying to figure that out. It was a huge panic for me.
Yeah. And what I also don't think people truly understand is how quickly people judge you. And again, this isn't right, it's not wrong. It just is, and it's just what happens. How quickly they judge you before you even open your mouth. It's like 2 to 3 seconds to 7 seconds. So they've made a judgment on you about how you look before you even say anything.
Yeah, I think that's right. That I think a lot of people don't realize how quickly that happens. I used to, and it all ebbs of life, right? Like I used to work for a bank and did a lot of work with like small business loans. And actually, like one of the things you see in like the research there is that actually people have different outcomes if they're going into the bank in person versus on the phone. And part of that is because in person you can see someone, and that's going to like shape your opinion of them for better or for worse. And so I think that like, whether or not we realize it consciously, the way people treat us because of how we show up like is very material in like the professional world, when we're going to get loans, like when we're, meeting someone on a date, like things like that. And I think a lot of people don't realize how quickly that actually happens.
Is there any actual data that shows about how appearance impacts both performance and perception?
There's been quite a few studies, and people have like, to your point, like the 7 seconds, like first impression. There's also quite documented like the halo effect of like when someone associates you with like competent, like everything around you, they just assume. And then like the lab coat one that I was mentioning earlier, it's like they had put people into these like doctor's lab coats, but they told one group that like, hey, you're wearing a painter coat, and another group you're wearing a doctor's coat. And like same exact coat, but it's like your perception. It's not necessarily like how people perceived you in that moment, but it's also like internally, if you feel like you're wearing something that like commands authority and knowledge and expertise, they found that that group made a lot less mistakes and performed a lot better, which is so interesting because I know we talk a lot about like impressions too, but something that Caden and I really are passionate about is like, how do I make sure that the person feels great too? And that is actually what matters more.
So talk a little bit about that. How do you make sure somebody feels great in what they're wearing?
So I think that it can be different for every person. I will say like there's some things that are pretty, I think, universally true over what we've seen, where there's the basic, which you commented on already, which I actually think feeling comfortable, feeling like your clothes fit the way you want. Actually, those are really big, kind of must be true things. But I think that the other thing is like, I think people get confidence in what they wear for different reasons. Like there are, a lot of our customers hyper logical, like analytical. And I think that being shown the research of like, hey, this is a suit that like many professionals have said works well for them for like all of these reasons. And like, here's all this documentation around like, people in these professions are wearing these kind of, and there's like some people who really get a lot of comfort in like logic and analysis and numbers, which you can actually get. And there are other people who I think get much more confidence in just having like a third party person be able to tell them like, hey, that actually really works for like your body, or like being honest about like, hey, actually like that doesn't quite suit like your lifestyle or where you're working. Like, why don't we try this other thing? I think that like I think actually part of feeling confident in what you wear is knowing that you have resources around you who are going to be honest about, what things look like, and aren't going to like send you out into the world like in a way that's like inappropriate.
It's like if your wife's mad at you or something.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it depends a little bit on the person, but those are some of the things we see of like, I think comfort and fit, like I think universally, like those things need to be there for someone to feel really good. And then depending on the person, they may be more like logic based and interested in like, show me the research on like why this works. And there are other people who are more like, I just want to know that someone is being honest with me about how this looks so that I can feel good and then going out into the world and knowing like I'm showing up in the way I want.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. As I'm listening and thinking about it, females seem to talk more about how they look and if something fits or do things match? Does it look good with each other? But guys, we don't do that. We'll go to our closet and we'll grab something and put it on, and then it kind of is what it is. We don't ask those questions.
Yeah, I think there's much more of a in general like a culture among women of like, I think Jinny's gotten many texts from me that are like this of like, hey, we're going to speak at this event. Does this look good? But I think that is something that I haven't observed as much in like male friends or like clients or things like that. Like, and I think that actually is like really, really challenging when it's like, who do you go to? I think, yeah, it's a big, big question. And I think that like can make feeling confident in dressing a lot harder.
Yeah, guys almost have like not universally true, but a lot of like uniforms that you could wear almost. It's like certain combos. I know these work. People wear them, which is why we're in San Francisco. So people make fun of like the Patagonia vest quite a lot of like with like the shirt. But that said, I think people still try to express in like different ways that are like maybe like we see a lot of fun socks or like a cool sneaker or like different ways to try to like express like themselves that is kind of not necessarily just like the shirt you wear or the pants.
And it's funny you say that because again, I'm way older than you all, but I grew up with Garanimals, and what they did they there was like a tag that matched. So let's just say an elephant shirt matched an elephant pants, or a horse, and so that's how. Yeah. And that was kind of how we grew up, and again, that it was kind of also how you got teased as well as a kid, because you have to wear Garanimals because you don't know what matches and goes together. Yeah, I mean, but as I think back, all the boys that's what we had. It just what it was, and I guess for parents it made things real easy. Just grab the horse and put it on or whatever it is. But as you get older, and as you make that transition again from being a student into being a professional, why is it that we aren't taught these things? Because I look at it again, not to get into too deep about the educational system. I think the educational system has failed us on any number of different levels. From not talking about financial literacy to our soft skills are so bad, but even in how we present ourselves, none of these things are ever really talked about. Why is that?
Yeah, it's just a good question. I mean, I'm curious what you think actually too, Jinny, about this. I think the things that kind of occur to me are a few things. I think one is like we've been talking about. I think that people really underappreciate how important the way we present ourselves is. I think it's often talked about as this kind of superficial, shallow thing. But then to Jinny's point earlier, if you actually look at the research, it's really not on a number of dimensions. But I think there is that misconception. And I think particularly for men, I think there's a cultural shift going on right now. But I think in the past, it's been more taboo for men to talk about appearance and grooming and fashion and things like that. And I think that actually is changing a lot right now, but there still is that gap. And so I also think there's, less of maybe a culture around talking about these things openly as a serious topic that makes sense to actually put thought and time into. So, and again, I think in maybe the younger generation now, you're seeing that changing a little bit more. And if you, look more broadly, some of the fastest growing categories and beauty and grooming and things like that are actually men's versus women's.
Yeah.
So I think there is lots of indication that's changing, but I think at least when we were in, high school, college, I think that was still maybe not quite taboo, but just something that was less talked about for men in particular. Yeah.
Well, because men don't do that. Men don't talk about that. That's just not what men do. Right? I mean, that's the societal perspective, right? And it's funny that you say that it's changing, because I did a presentation at an college institution, a little over a month ago, and I was talking about some of the professional development things that they did, and the person I was talking to said the session that had the most participation of the students was one on dress for men.
Oh, that's so interesting.
It kind of blew me away that more there were more men that attended and actually participated in the session than any of the other sessions that they did throughout the course of the year. And so there's maybe there is some change, or maybe there is some acknowledgement that there needs to be some growth in that space as well.
I'm so curious, is it dress for work or every day, or is it just overall?
It was a professional dress presentation.
Oh, okay.
And you know what? One of the things that I did as a professor is, in one class each year, we came up with dress norms, right? And that was the dress norms for the entire program for that year. So the class, so one class did dress norms, one class did behavior norms, and it took us almost 3 full class periods to come up with 3 different levels of dress, and to be able to get them to understand. And they really kind of guided. They ran the conversation. I guided them and said, well, no, we're not going to do that for this level of dress. And here's why. But to get them to understand that even in a professional setting, you have different time periods when things are appropriate and things aren't appropriate.
What were some of the dress norms? So
basically we broke it down into 3. From formal would be a suit and tie for guys. And one of the things that I said is I would never tell a female what to wear, because that's just not, I mean, I can't even dress myself, let alone somebody else. So the females kind of did their thing. and I had another female professor kind of, work on that one. But for guys, it was, we got really, really specific. So let's just say the former was a suit and tie where the belt had to match the shoes, facial grooming, which was a big one in terms of what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And all the way down to casual, which we talked about was like khakis and a golf shirt. But the shoes and belts still had to match. Just things that people wouldn't necessarily think about. And one of the things you talk about socks, I was always no weird socks. Just I don't want. I just want plain socks. And I kind of gave in on that because, if they want to wear funny socks and okay, from on a casual perspective, but not when we get all the way up to a formal perspective. Now we need to make sure that we're really kind of buttoned up and we're living and breathing that scenario.
That's a great session. I'm glad you cover that with your students. And as you're saying that, reminded me when I first started my first job in consulting, we had this big training. And for us, it was a lot less of like, because you mentioned like, here's like, you wear a suit, you match your belt with your shoes. I don't know if you feel this way, Caden. I feel like we were given like a lot of restrictions. Like, do not wear your skirt past your knees. Don't wear open toe shoes. Your shirt, like a collar, like the top collar must be like covering and must be a certain shape, but do not wear certain other shapes. And in many ways, it's like these are the rules of what you can't wear, but we weren't really told as much of like what you can. And so it made me realize is like actually the women that come to our platform, they universally, for the most part, want professional wear. And then for men, it's a lot of like, what I wear outside of professional. Because like you kind of already said, like match your belt with your shoes, like wear a shirt and a blazer, and like they already have that uniform of like I know how to do that, and so they're looking for like date night, going to hang out with friends, and like casual wear. Versus for women, we're giving a lot of rules, but a lot less like this is how you put together an outfit, and so we get a lot of like what I wear to work, what is business casual, things like that.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
It's a good point. I do think like, she's point. I think there's a much more kind of standardized like work uniform for men, and I feel like it's been interesting. One of like the like very specific use cases I hear come up a lot for men that men struggle with is like, what if I'm in like a professional environment but it's like after work, where it's like always things like, oh, it's like a work happy hour, or it's like, going to get lunch with my colleagues, or it's, the office holiday party. It's like those settings where you still want to look appropriate and buttoned up, but actually some of the restrictions have been loosened. And I think that's where like people have a hard time, where it's like, okay, now the rule book is like unclear. So what do I do with that?
And, and I struggle with that as I help people sometimes, because I think when you're younger, there's less room for error, right? Because as from the older and more senior people in an organization, they're judging people, and they can, okay, if you're not going to be doing the things that we want you to do, and there's very little room for error. Especially you take Gen Z for example. If they mess one thing up, if they come off as arrogant, or if they come off as not caring one time, then they're just kind of pushed aside, as opposed to giving some grace and saying, okay, why, give me some explanation on why you said that, or why you look like that, or why you did this, or why you did that. It's just one mistake, and now you're in the other pile. And I think that's always been the case. But with Gen Z today, and it's really my generation and the Boomer generation, who is very in general intolerant of the younger generations and their ideas.
I was just gonna say, Tim, I think like one of the reflections I had while you were talking was I think Jenny and I both worked for a couple years. We like had joined the workforce, pre-COVID, worked through COVID,
Mhm.
and then worked for a few years after COVID before going back to grad school. And I think one of the like reflections I had as you were talking was like I felt really bad for the people on my team who joined who were Gen Z and who had never like worked pre-COVID because I think like to your point around like
Mhm.
margin of error, I think it was like doubly hard for them because they didn't have exposure to, how people dress in the workplace coming out of college because everything was remote. And so then it was very difficult, like coming back into the office post COVID. And you could see in a lot of them, like
Mhm.
there was not as much awareness around like how do you trust because they hadn't been exposed to that before. And I think to your point, it's unfortunate because like this was like when you're junior, there is very little room for error where like people are forming their first impressions of you and like those really stick in ways that are often kind of unfair. And I think that if you come into the office for the first time dressed in a way that isn't appropriate, that's the first impression people form of you, like whether or not that's fair and can be really hard to overcome.
So what are three things that someone can fix immediately that'll change how they're perceived?
Ooh, that's a good one. Three things. Maybe Caden, we can tag team. Like I'll go. um, I think it's the dressing for like the right. This is probably not could be a non-answer, but like like the occasion that you're dressing for, right? If it's a professional,
Mhm.
then you want to dress a little more professional. If it's casual, you might want to feel comfortable. Like
Mhm.
oftentimes, I think the perception is like you have to be very well dressed for every occasion, but that's not the
Right.
case. Like if I'm lounging at home, I'm hanging with friends. Like sometimes I'll wear athleisure. It doesn't have to be always so
Mhm.
buttoned up. And I think the number one is like actually like if you feel like you fit in or like you feel like you're
Right.
dressed well for the occasion. And so usually if it's like a high stakes thing, I'll put a little more effort and thought. If it's low stakes, I keep reaching for the same thing over and over again because
Right.
I feel great.
Yeah, I think on related to that, especially for men, I think one big unlock is around fit. So
Yeah.
on our platform, for example, we have people, it's optional, but you can do a body scan so that your stylist knows like your measurements and your body shape. And that actually goes a really long way in terms of like, hey, you've been wearing these kind of slim cut pants, but they're probably too tight around your thighs. So let's actually get you an athletic pants. That's or like athletic cut pants. That's going to look a little more professional and refined. And I think that you can also do that by like, going into a store, talking to an associate, like they can usually help you with things like
Mhm.
that. I think fit is like a really big unlock in particular for men, even if you don't change like anything else. I think that makes a big difference in terms of like looking put together. I think the other thing that we see with a lot of men in particular is like, I think to your point, there's that like wanting to be appropriate, but also I think people tend to just like look better and feel better when they have like some little amount of like self-expression. And I think
Mhm.
that one really easy way to do that I don't know if you like your term, but I think a lot of men struggle with is around like color and I think that like that actually is a really easy unlock is like I think a lot of people like I mean this is true for many of the men in my life like look at their closets and are like okay I have blues and black and white and I think that like even adding a couple of like colors and patterns that like actually kind of feel like they show more of yourself like there are like really subtle ways to do that are going to still look appropriate but are also going to make you feel like I have more variety like there are things I can grab that make me actually feel a little more excited and like that is going to impact how people look at me and how I feel.
Mhm.
So again, I think that's a like that is often something that our stylists work with men
Mhm.
on. And again, like even if you're not working with a stylist, I think like highlighting that to like an associate or like pushing yourself in that dimension is a good way to feel a little more like I'm expressing myself and there's variety, but also I'm still kind of like in the realm of like what is appropriate and like I don't feel like I stick out in a bad way.
I think you kind of pointed me out without pointing me out.
Oh.
That
I mean, you look great, Tim.
I
I'm generalizing.
but I've got a ton of blue shirts and I've got a ton of white shirts I've got one red shirt, and even my casual stuff, it's pretty much all blue. It's for whatever reason, it's just kind of worked out that way. And it's almost funny you said that. When I walked into my office today, I work in an office building that's got 5 or 6 different professional organizations around, and the lawyer was coming out of his office and he did a double take because I came in, I've got dress pants on, I've got my boots on, and I was wearing a white fishing shirt. And he said, Tim, you don't match. I said, I know. Because I keep a couple of different shirts here in the office, depending on whether I'm going to be doing this or going out, customer facing. So sometimes I'll wear shorts in here, and if I'm just doing a podcast, I'll just put a shirt on. Nobody can really tell. But if I'm going out customer facing, I've got to make sure that I'm dressed appropriately. And when I came in this morning, it just really kind of threw him off because he didn't recognize me in dress pants, boots, and my casual fishing shirt.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, and it wasn't blue, and so that must have really thrown him off. So. What about the fabrics today? Because I think about almost everything that I own, almost all the dress shirts that I own. If it's not ironed, it'll be wrinkled, right? And so making sure things that are pressed and starched and looks good. But a lot of materials today, they don't have to be ironed. How has that really kind of changed how guys in particular, how we go about dressing and thinking about things that we wear? Because again, going back to when I was teaching, I would say your shirts has to be pressed, and you have to put starch on it. For me, starch is important because the older clothes, if you didn't, if you wore it and you were sitting down, it was going to wrinkle really, really, really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I personally have a lot of clothes that wrinkle very, very quickly, and had to quickly steam them each time. I think for this one, constantly wrinkles, and so I need to steam it beforehand. But I'm curious on all the expansion of fabrics too. Of now we have kind of more to play with. Now you have silks and different textures and different drapes. And I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but a lot of our styling team is, but they love playing with the way something drapes on a body looks a little bit differently, of if it's a little thicker, if it's a little thinner, how does it look like on you, and how to pair them together. So it's kind of almost expanding a little bit the tools that you can play with and express through. And so a lot of times people buy the same color over and over again, but in different, and a different texture or a different, almost a slightly different flavor to the very similar thing.
Yeah, and it allows, going back to what you all mentioned, it's some of the things allowed to go from work into a casual situation very, very easily without really having to change anything. I mean, it could be really, if you're in a suit and tie for a guy, just take off the suit jacket and take off the tie, and now you're almost in maybe an up casual look, and it's fine for going out to drinks or on a date or what have you, as opposed to having to go home and change clothes or something of that nature.
Yeah, and I think going back to the previous point you asked, Tim, around quick things people can do today to look better. I do think that actually is a big one of and I think I personally find this difficult, but I think it's true of one of the kind of big pieces of advice our stylists always give is if you're doing kind of the closet clean out before you buy a bunch of new things, you should be kind of ruthless about if something is too small, if there are stains, if there are rips, if it's worn, just to throw it out, donate it. I think that it's so simple, but a lot of the things that just make you look more put together are is the collar on your shirt standing up and not really worn? Is it is if there's a visible stain on something, that's something people are going to notice. And so I think a lot of it is kind of in those simple details of being a little bit ruthless about like getting rid of things that are, or maybe not wearing things that are past their prime to places where you feel like you really do need to look put together. And that also, I think, goes a long way in terms of, instantly making you look a little more elevated.
Yeah. And again, you're calling me out again. Almost almost every shirt I have has a stain on it. But that's I can't help that. It's really funny. I was at an event last August, and new shirts, two new suits, and my wife told me she was very, very specific. She said, when you go into this, because I was getting some professional pictures done, and I was actually interviewing somebody, and she said, when you do these things, this is what you have to do. I didn't do any of it. Got it all wrong. And she said, if you get a stain on any of these new shirts, I'm not buying you any new shirts ever again. And I didn't get any stains on the shirt the first time I wore it, but the second and third time they're ruined now. But it's important. The stain thing I think is huge, especially if it's not something that can be covered up with a jacket or tie or what have you, because I think it's when you have a stain on your shirt, it's almost like guys not taking care of their shoes, not having polished shoes. It's something that is noticed right away and diminishes what other people think of you, whether you realize it or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that honestly, like, this is why I think that like really stylists like don't just understand like fashion, but they also understand you and your lifestyle, because I think that like the reality is like I'm also someone who I stain clothes really easily. Like, and so I think that just means that when I go buy new clothes, I'm like conscientious. I buy things that can be like machine washed, or like things that are a little more resilient. Like, I think that a really good stylist is also good at like understanding, like, not just here's what's going to look good on you and here's fat, but like, here's your lifestyle, and like, here are the kind of clothes that are actually going to suit your lifestyle, versus like, maybe you don't want a whole wardrobe of things that have to be dry cleaned. Like, that might not be reasonable for a lot of people. And I think that's totally fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost like it's more about who you are and your identity as opposed to the actual, clothes that you're actually wearing. So let's talk about Cello and how, what you all do and how it actually works. Because again, I think it's amazing how quickly we've come from a technology perspective and what we can actually do with it, and what you all are doing with Cello and fashion it's incredible to me. So walk us through the process.
Yeah. So basically, to start, we try to get as much information about you, your context, your lifestyle as possible. And so we'll hop on a call kind of like this, except not with a podcast, but you're going through your closet. It's about 20 to 30 minutes. And on average, we probably scan and we start scanning your clothes. So we get probably like 70 items on average. Render that. So we have a sense of like what you like, the brands that you like, what your previous shopping habits are, and like kind of what we're working with, because we don't want you to like overhaul your closet or do brand new shopping just for the sake of like getting a new wardrobe. Like, how do you maximize that? But also, like, during the call, we're also chatting with you of like, what is your lifestyle? Do you like, are you like, I guess three of us, where we stain our clothes pretty often. And so like, we need more durable clothing, or do you not mind being a little more like delicate with your clothes? And you can like, then we can expand through like different fabrics like silks and things like that. So getting a sense of what works for you. And we also scan your body. So we know, like, to Caden's point, like, men's tailoring is important. Like, fit is one of the key things to know if like an outfit looks great. And so we scan that too. And so we're able to custom tailor things to you. And what you're looking for. So like, what are your lifestyles? So you go to work, you're going on a dinner date, and then you like to hang out, like, or you're traveling for vacation. So like those occasions, giving you some outfit combinations, but also kind of some lessons to learn of like things that are easy combo. So you don't actually have to go back to styles every day of like, oh, like, how do I pair certain colors together? one tip that I learned from stylists is actually like the earth tone, cool tone matching. So like blues and grays match really well, and like what are the color combos, things like that. And so from there, in that 20 minutes, we gather all that context about you, send it over to a stylist. And our stylists are really, they're trained in fashion. Like they graduate from like your top fashion houses, like Parsons, FIT, and they like know how to like the garments construct and how they pair well together. And so they'll go through, look at your wardrobe, tell you you're missing often, like what you're missing. Like oftentimes for a lot of guys, it's color. For women, it's like, oh, you're missing certain, for me specifically, like I'm missing a lot of like different textures and like different layers to play with. And so give you a couple things to shop within the price range and the budget that you like are comfortable with. And so we can work from like high end if you're comfortable, but also like even low end, or if you're like a thrifter or things like that. If you're a little more budget conscious, we can work with that too, because there are a lot of different options, and then create the outfit combinations for you.
So when you talk about textures, what does that mean for guys?
So for guys, it's a lot of like, typically it's like a lot of shirts, but then there's like sweaters, and they're all like different prints, and like there are different like we were talking about fabrics earlier too, of like actually if you introduce something, an interesting texture to an outfit, it can like make it look a little more cohesive and a little different too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because and again, this is just the way I am, and I'm a plain and simple person. You know, if it's if my wife wants to introduce something that is like different, I'm very, very resistant to it. So like for me, if I were to come, let's just think here. So I bought a obviously it was blue. It was a kind of a, I wouldn't say checkered, but it was small squares. And my wife said, "Wow, I can't believe that you would even buy that." I said, "Well, I like it because it was blue." But that to her really kind of threw her off. That wasn't really my style, but I liked it. So once you start getting into, at least for me, things that are maybe not conservative. Let's just put it this way: not conservative. That really kind of throws me off, and I probably wouldn't wear it. And so do you take those things into account as well?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good question. Yeah, on that like kind of intake call that Jinny's describing, we'll usually probe on like, hey, where do you feel comfortable? Like, what are the things that like, are just like complete no-goes for you? But we've also found is like, I think one, it can sometimes be helpful to suggest a few things that we think are going to be outside your comfort zone, even if it's just a way to get feedback. So like what our process typically works is like,
Right.
After we have all that context to Jinny's point, and like it goes off to a stylist, we'll come back with an initial set of recommendations of like, here's what I think you're missing, here's what you might want to buy, and here's how this could look in outfits. But in that process, we build in like a feedback loop where you go through that initial like kind of set of looks and like say, I like that, I don't like that, and here's why. And it actually can be kind of helpful to include some things that like we sort of know, like, hey, this could look good on you, but like you might not feel comfortable in it, because it's good to kind of explore the like, what are the boundaries, and like
Right.
if some people are excited to kind of push the boundary, and they're like, yeah, I want to completely change my style, and like you should suggest things I would never think of. And other people are like, actually I in general I like my style, and it's more like I want to elevate on the edges, but I don't want to like completely stray from it.
Right.
So we see both types, and we build that into the process of like, we're gonna like, getting your feedback is very important, because ultimately this is about making you feel good, and it's not about like pushing an identity on you that isn't true to you.
Right.
And then there's kind of a range in terms of how far people are wanting to go in terms of like really doing something new versus just like kind of elevating sort of what's already there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So with your clients, do they range in age? Let's just say from let's just say I'm late 50s to down to early 20s.
Yeah, it's anywhere from 25 to 75 is kind of
Really?
like it's a huge range. And I think it's because like, no matter if you're like younger and you're like exploring your new style, if you're older, like I think it's always like people like to be slightly pushed. Like I think Caden mentioned, like you're either pushing on the edges or you're doing a full transformation. But on like like I think Tim, like we don't need to show you like how to buy another blue shirt. Like you already know how to do that quite well.
I'm pretty good at that.
People are always looking to like be stretched a little bit farther.
Right.
Like, okay, like what is something that I haven't thought about? And so it's the how far we're stretching them that we're playing around with. Like some people only want to do like blue with like a small detail, and other people are like, okay, I want to try a full different color palette.
Is there something that your customers struggle with that really kind of surprised you?
That's a good question. It's interesting. I think that one thing that I've noticed, and you kind of were mentioning this, Tim, is like, especially for some of the, the guys who are in like, let's say like 35 plus, who a lot of them have partners, like have a girlfriend, have a wife, things like that, and who will do a lot of the like shopping for them. I think something that's been interesting to me is like, there's been a couple of customers we've worked with who said like, I simultaneously really appreciate that like my partner is like buying these things for me and like giving me fashion advice. But then there is this piece of like, but like I kind of wanted to do this because I wanted like an objective third party opinion from someone. And I think that there is something there of like, even if you have a support system like a girlfriend, wife, whatever, who's like helping you make these decisions, every so often I think people do struggle when it's like, okay, like, but what would someone who doesn't know me and like love me and all of that say like about, what I'm wearing? I think that's something people struggle with. And there's a lot of like comfort you can get from that when it's like, okay, I have like a more objective expert opinion now, whether that's good or bad. Like, I think that something that kind of surprised us was like, people don't just want you to tell them like, oh, you look amazing. Like they want you to be honest about
truth.
like,
they want truth.
Yeah. Right. Like, and that could be some kind of tough love of like, hey, like actually, this, like these, like you're not reaching your potential in terms of like how you could really look. So I think that I hadn't realized that going in, that like actually a lot of what people struggle with is like needing that kind of like expert, neutral, third party opinion to feel really good about the decisions they're making, which I hadn't expected.
That is so interesting, just from the perspective of we're so worried about other people judging us. And wow. So on some level, would it be fair to say that it's mostly the, like you said, the 35 plus, the older generations that's is thinking that, as opposed to, the 20 to 30, 35 group is doing? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Jinny, I'm curious what you think, but I think that's like a sentiment I've heard more from like slightly maybe older, like more mature professionals. I think it's something that you hear like with younger generation as well, but I think that like there is something about like if you're like slightly older and you're kind of around, fewer like new ideas and perspectives and like fashion and stuff like that, I think you have more curiosity around like, are there other things I should be thinking about? Like, I'm not quite sure. Like, I'm hearing this from the people in my life, but like, maybe it'd be good to hear it from someone else who is just like an outsider. So that's my impression based on our customers. But, Jinny, I don't know if you kind of had the same thought.
Yeah, I have a theory, and I think like when you're younger, you're in school, you're going to a lot of like different things, so you get feedback really quickly. Like there's a lot, if you wear an outfit and like it doesn't look good, like you immediately go out and people give you that feedback and like tell you, hey, that doesn't look great. And I think like as you're older, like you kind of like hang around the same areas, but you don't get like a ton of people coming in to be like, okay, like that. Like, so it's a little bit harder to adjust, which is that I think is why people like appreciate like an expert opinion. And then I think there's also like this generation thing. Like I think younger Gen Z and like younger generations take a lot of information and approval from their peers versus like the older generation care a lot more about like experts, and like that's how they take in information. So it's a little bit of like how generations think.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, it's, and I think there's also separation between the way males and females take that as well. For me, and I laugh. I was doing a webinar and I had a question that didn't really have anything to do with me or what I was wearing, and I asked the question, and the person who was leading the webinar actually pulled up my profile on the website, and the first thing she said to me is, "Tim, you have to change your clothes. And you got to get better pictures." I was like, "Oh my God." And I started laughing because to me, I get it. I mean, this is what you're working with. There's only so much I can do. But some people take that stuff really personal, and, guys to me don't take it nearly as personal as females do. And, being able to understand where she was just trying to help, as opposed to really trying to make a personal attack on somebody.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think it like does require a lot of, trust and care to be able to deliver like feedback to someone. But I think at the end of the day, it's really appreciated. And I think like you feel better when like, okay, someone will tell me if this isn't quite working versus they'll just let me go into the world looking like a way that I wouldn't want to. Yeah.
Right. Right. So if someone wanted to be actually taken serious tomorrow, what's the one thing they need to fix tonight?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to need to take a quick second and think on it. So if someone wanted to get serious about like dressing well, is that what should they do tonight? I think Caden's point earlier of like actually like a lot of our clients struggle to build their wardrobe until they feel like they shed away the stuff that to make space. Like I would get rid of the things that don't fit you well, are not comfortable. It's oftentimes like psychological. Like you can't really make space for more items, and like sometimes like closet space is quite limited.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that to Jinny's point, like so much of it is psychological, and like I think that you actually feel better in the morning where you grab a shirt or pair of pants and like it fits well and it's not stained and you can wear it immediately versus like I think a lot of the struggles some of our customers have highlighted is like, oh, I have this full closet, but then there's something wrong with everything. Like if like things don't fit anymore, they have holes in them, they have stains. Like, this shirt is 10 years old and it's worn out. Like, I think that adds a lot of like cognitive burden. And to Jinny's point, just actually doing kind of a sweep and like seeing like, okay, out of this wardrobe, what do I actually already have that like I feel good in and I love, like that actually will go a long way before you even like buy new things.
That's so interesting. And it, that's hard to do.
Yeah.
As I think about it, to get rid of things that, clothes, I think a lot of times have sentimental value, and there's some sentimental attachment to it, like either who you were with when you got it or who you were with when you wore it, whatever it is, and you don't want you don't necessarily wear it anymore, but you don't want to get rid of it, and it's taking up that space, and that's kind of hard. As I think about that, that's kind of a hard thing to do.
It is hard to do, and I think it's like kind of funny, like counterintuitive. Like you ask, like, how do you dress better? And our answer is get rid of some clothes.
Get rid of your clothes.
But it's kind of like when you go to a restaurant and the restaurant has a ton of different menu options.
Yeah. Like
you take a long time to figure out like what you actually want versus like one that has 3 options. It's like I'm choosing between 3 things that I like. If it's your clothes, it's like 3 things that fit me well and I already like it, versus trying to have to do like the mental gymnastics of like sorting through things. But I totally understand the sentimental value. Like I personally have a lot of clothes that I'm like struggling to, I'm like, do I keep? But I haven't worn it in like over 2 years. So clearly it's time to get rid of it. But I think that's okay. And oftentimes what we'll do with our customers is like, actually, like, if you need an objective person to tell you keep or not keep, like, we can give you like some thoughts of like, actually, like, this doesn't serve you. You can keep it if it's sentimental, but like, you're probably not going to wear it.
What are your thoughts on like picking you whatever you're going to wear out tonight for tomorrow, as opposed to getting up and deciding in the morning what you're going to wear?
Oh, I think it's personal preference. One thing that I recently just started doing is I actually plugged my cello, like all my clothes, into like an AI bot that looks at the weather. And then it looks at like my calendar of the things that I'm doing. I actually got this idea from a friend because she started doing that with like with cello too. And so it sends me an email every morning of like, based on the weather, based on what you're doing, here's the outfit combination. Because I have a ton of outfits in there already that my stylist created for me. And so but that for me comes, and I specifically set it for the morning and not the night of. And so mostly because I like to just pick things like on the day of what I'm feeling. But I know a lot of people who lay their clothes out the night before or like plan in advance. Caden, what do you do?
Well, Jinny's kind of a tech whiz, so I've been like, Jinny, can you build this for me too? So I have it selfishly. So this is a reminder to ask her to do that amid all of her other work. Yeah. I think I'm also I think more of a morning, but I do think when I have like a high pressure event or like something where I'm gonna have to speak or I'm in an interview or like I have a meeting that like I really need to show up well for, I'll do it the night before, because I think that like there is something like I've definitely felt the panic before of like, oh my god, I have to go to like this job interview and it's the morning of, and I realized the skirt I was going to wear has a stain on it, and now I don't know. Like it's like I think that for really high stakes events, I like to avoid that, and so I'll do it like in advance. But otherwise, I'm a morning person.
That's awesome. I rotate, so whatever's next.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter what it is. Whatever's next, that's kind of what it is, unless there's something important. Yeah. And then I'll rearrange it. But Jinny, that what you do is it's fascinating that's where we are with technology. That what I'm a big believer in, that the people that are the smartest and that are the most busy make the least mundane decisions, like what they're going to wear, what they're going to eat. Those other things they let other things drive those decisions so that they can spend their mental time and mental energy on bigger things. And with AI being able to do that, my guess is, I don't know how long it took you to set that up, but once it's set up, you're done with that now, right? Unless you want to make a change, and that's probably wouldn't take much to change that prompt or whatever. And now you're just you freed up a heck of a lot of time.
I do, yeah. I think for mine, I like to choose from outfits, so it gives me like three to choose from. So it's like a small menu,
right,
each morning. And I think that decision making is more like, I feel confident in these because like my stylists have already created these outfits,
right,
and they had like a human had acknowledged it and it looked good, and it was like, I feel confident. Like, okay, like now I'm just approving,
right.
And so like taking a lot of that mental burden out of it. I think it's kind of fun that like tech has allowed us to do that now.
Yeah.
But like sometimes it is fun. Like sometimes I am in the mood to like play dress up and like figuring things out. And then if I'm super busy, it really depends on like what I'm doing that day and if I'm busy.
Well, so does it, I don't want to get too far into weasels, but does it take into account that you've worn something so many times and haven't worn something that many times?
Yeah, a little more like variety. And so if I already, like if I'm like, Kate and I often go to like speaking events and like pitching. And so like,
right,
if I've already worn this and I've been like photographed in it, I probably want to wear something a little different. Yeah. Right. And like oftentimes it's probably like if it's recommending me the same, and that's important because like laundry, if things are dirty, like you don't want to wear the same thing that same week or like within a few weeks. And so some variety, but I'm also not of someone who like needs constant variety, and so takes that into account too.
That's awesome. It's fascinating to me. So where can people connect with you and learn more about cello?
Yeah. So I think the best thing would be to visit our website. If anyone has interest in learning more or getting styled. So we're at OCELLO closet.com. Or you can always email me or Jinny at hello@cellocloset.com. But yes, we are actively taking more clients, would love to style folks, and connect. So it would be great to check us out.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and I love what you're doing. It's amazing, and you'll be seeing my email coming over. I think you're going to make my wife a lot happier. Take a lot of pressure off her. Keep up the good work. I love what you're doing. I love that you two do this together, and that you're on here together. Through all the interviews I've done, I think you're only the second time that I've had both people on at the same time. And I just think it brings so much more to what you all are doing and to the interview. So thank you so much for making the time to do that.
Thanks, Tim. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Tim.
Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
You too.
Bye.
Take care.
Be sure to visit speakingwithconfidencepodcast.com to get your free ebook, The Top 21 Challenges for Public Speakers and How to Overcome Them. You can also register for the Forming for Public Speaking course. Always remember, your voice has the power to change the world. We'll talk to you next time. Take care.